It's time for the District 4 Report, presented to you by Professor Diggs himself, only on PilePointBearcats.com. Class begins now.
Week 13 of the Texas high school football season. Thank you to our friends from Pilot Point for playing me in. I am the Professor, Matt Diggs, and thank you for another trip to the District 4 3A Report. And the District 4 3A Report's getting a little lonely, as we're going to talk about, as we're down to our final two teams. But as long as there's at least one team from District 4 3A plowing along, I will be here to give you that District 4 3A report. Let's talk about what happened last week. Let's kind of give you some critical analysis of what happened last week. Then we'll talk about what is to come. And again, we'll kind of take a fresh look at the playoff race over the last couple of weeks. And last week we said goodbye to Pilot Point. Pilot Point, I had them as a 6-point favorite to early. In fact, our friends at the Bearcat blog made a nice little video with some clips of this trying to clown me, even though I picked Pilot Point to win. I picked them to win, but yet they lost by 22. Jim Ned versus Peaster, I took Jim Ned by 50. They won 49-12, which was a 37-point spread over Peaster. Breckenridge against Whitesboro. Whitesboro yet again overachieving. I gave lots of love to Whitesboro last week. They proved me right. I picked them to win by 18, which I thought was a comfortable point margin. I thought, with the way Breckenridge had been playing, getting up to that number 2 seed, that Whitesboro, and Whitesboro was playing at a very high level as well. I'm like, 18 points? That's a good point spread. I put some thought into that. Nah, Coach Fagan said 56-14, and we'll talk a little bit more about the 4-3A games in depth. Bushland against Slayton, I had Bushland by 31. They won by 49, so a bit of an overachieving win. Brock versus Wall, I had Brock by 42. They won by 34, and we'll talk a little more about that game. Shallow Water and Dalhart, I had Shallow Water winning that game by 21. They won 56-18, won that game by 38. Denver City against Amarillo River Road, I had Denver City by 8. Flip that score. If you would have had it the other way, I would have had it. Amarillo River Road won 14-6, so they won by 8. And then Muleshoe against Brownfield, a little closer than a lot of people thought. I had Muleshoe winning that game by 14. They ended up winning by 4, 21-17. So let's take a look at the District 4 3A games in a little more detail. We'll break down the Brock scores. You got Brock on my mind, the box scores. And Jim Ned winning 49-12. This game was never really in doubt. And when you look at what Jim Ned does, I told you last week I gave the parable of them reminding me of Denton Ryan and Peaster reminding me a little bit of Frisco Lone Star, or Brock also reminding me a little bit of Frisco Lone Star. They put up big stats, but, they grind and they're just so efficient, and they haven't really been pushed in the way their coaching philosophy. And you can really see this in their box score. Tate Yardley only threw the ball 15 times, 9 for 15, 178 yards, so about 20 yards a pass, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. They're really good running back. Xavier Wishart only had to carry the ball 13 times for 132 yards, 3 touchdowns, 10 yards a carry. On the receiving end, just big plays. Blaine Palmer, 2 catches for 64 yards. Xavier Wishart running him out of that backfield, 1 reception for 43 yards. And that going to the house. I mean, this is just a really good ball squad, but they haven't had to be pushed the way they're playing, this 11-0 style. So you just don't know what you're going to get when they play Brock. It is literally a coin flip, because just the way they play football, they're not going to beat a Peaster 80-6 like Brock did. You look at that score, it was 49-0. At one point, 49-12 final, with the last 12 points being scored by Peaster. And then you look at their rushing. I mean, like 10 different people got to run the ball. You see freshmen running the ball. Trey Hicks ran it 2 times as a freshman. Gray Beasley ran it 5 times as a freshman. They had 3 sophomores run it. I mean, this is a team that one of the things I learned as a high school football analyst, and I kind of have fun with it in some ways, is that some teams just run up the score. That's just their personal philosophy. In fact, I was very proud of myself that there were 320 games last week, and I picked every single game, and I picked the game with the biggest point spread. I said I believed Mart would have the biggest point spread out of all of the teams in the state, out of all 320 teams, and they won 84-6. They had a 78 point spread. Aledo was second. They had a 77 point spread. That's just what Mart's going to do, And if you're playing Mart, you got to stop them. And they're so talented. It's not to say they're not playing second teamers and things, but they're just going to run an efficient offense, and they're going to put up some scores. Whereas Jim Ned, they're running 11 people out there, and they ran the ball 35 times, and other than Xavier Wishart, nobody ran the ball more than 5 times, and you just saw that kind of diversity. For Peaster, saying goodbye to them, Gunnar McElroy went 14 for 26, 142 yards. Caden Steen rushing the ball 7 for 36. Gunnar McElroy, very much like the Whitesboro game, was running for his life. He had 12 carries, negative 12 yards. Did get a touchdown in there. Kamar Gilbert had a nice game, 8 carries, 52 yards, 6.5 yards a carry. Receiving the ball, it was just a shutdown effort by Jim Ned. Brody Williams, 3 receptions for 35 yards. Cannon Kelly, 3 receptions for 19 yards. Just a complete team win for Jim Ned. Wall against Brock, just again, all the domination that you would expect from Brock happened again. I mean, we talk about Cutter Wilson every single week, and he brings up Madden numbers. 22 carries, 254 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And if you look at Jim Ned's box score, and you look at Brock's box score, 10 yards a carry. And it's just the difference between the amount of plays they run. Brock ran 61 plays for 562 yards. Jim Ned just wasn't running that many plays. They slowed it down, ran the clock. Brock was hurrying it up a little more. Time of possession, very equal for these two teams, 24-41 to 23-17. Thank you to our friends at Digital Scout, and obviously the coaches at Brock who continue to put their stats out there for all of us. Tyler Moody, another great game, 16 for 24, 195 yards, 3 touchdowns. 2 of those touchdowns came to Eli Potts, who had 7 receptions for 109 yards. And that's just what Brock does. They're averaging 10 yards a play, big play offense. Nathan Jones didn't have to have a big game, but we saw when he needed to have a big game a couple of times this year, he has. And I don't think this week is going to be the week where he needs to have a big game. It's just we're all waiting for that Jim Ned versus Brock game. We've been talking about it. It's almost a punchline on the District 4 3A report. 3 receptions, 34 yards, and a touchdown for Nathan Jones. So if you had him on your high school fantasy team, he did get you that touchdown. Breckenridge versus Whitesboro. Just another great game for Whitesboro. And what I'm just seeing from White, they're finding their groove. They're finding their big play offense. I saw it against Peaster. Mac Harper, 14 for 20, 324 yards. So that means he's averaging about 23 yards a reception, 4 touchdowns, did throw an interception. His favorite target was Torin Nagelstad, 5 receptions for 133 yards. Sean Shares, 4 for 100 and a touchdown. Nagelstad with a touchdown as well. Jacob Hermes, 6 for 137 and 3 touchdowns. So anytime these kids touch the ball, they're scoring, especially Jacob Hermes. And then you throw Jacob Hermes' brother Clay Hermes in there, and he went 4 for 4 for a touchdown and 80 yards. So, even when they put in their second string, they were having pretty good success. Running the ball, they didn't have to run the ball, but they 27 for 158 as a team, 6 yards, 3 touchdowns. Sean Shares had 2 carries for 17 yards. Jay Sanders, 2 for 19. Mac Harper, 5 for 33. Asher Contreras didn't have a monster day, but they didn't need him to have a monster day. 14 for 77 in that game. And Whitesboro, just another impressive victory. Pilot Point versus Early. Pilot Point just did not have a good game. It was 29-0 before we even knew it, 29-7 at halftime, and just kind of trading touchdowns. Pilot Point could never figure it out in this game, and really that was kind of the post mortem for Pilot Point this whole season, is that they just could not figure it out. There was just something there that everybody could kind of see when you watched Pilot Point or when you monitored them, just a talent deficiency as far as the talent did not on the field, especially the skill positions, did not match the output. And again, my theory was that just the infrastructure of the team as far as the offensive and defensive line just didn't, just wasn't there. Wyatt Smith, 16 for 36, 270 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, very costly interceptions, run back. Aiden Cox, rushing the ball, and they were trying everything. He had 2 carries for 33 yards. Receiving, another big game, 6 for 182, 2 touchdowns. As a senior, he will probably go out a first-team All-District kid. It was fun to cover Aiden Cox this year. I mean, this is a kid who put up video game numbers every single week. Ish Harris, you would expect him to be all over the box score, and obviously Early was able to keep him shut down. 9 carries for 26 yards. His longest run against Early was only 7 yards. Had 3 receptions for 20 yards on the receiving side of the ball. But if you're a Pilot Point fan, you look at Gage Anderson against that defense that shut Ish Harris down. This is a freshman. I mean, I got 6th graders, so I've got 11-year-old kids. It's like 3 years older. So 3 years older than my kids who not even hitting puberty yet and just watch cartoons and stuff. 3 years later, this kid, 11 carries, 47 yards. Pilot Point's got to be very excited getting Wyatt Smith and Gage Anderson back. But really, in reflecting on the year, and I'm going to be hard because I feel like, District 4-3A report brings me in for the truth. When I reflectively look back at the season, I feel like I'm more proud of Peaster, because Peaster is a team that is just starting 11-man football. Obviously, they have a athletic tradition in basketball over there. They're just starting football on that side of the thing. And to me, they over-excelled just about in every way. I mean, they went 7-4. They lost the games they were supposed to lose in district. They had that really big win against Paradise, which ended up being what propelled them into the playoffs. In non-district, they had some really good wins against Alvord Monday and Trinity Valley, and they had good wins in district. So I kind of, the way I judge teams in football is kind of a ceiling. I kind of assess a ceiling with the talent that they have and the coaching staffs and the not the infrastructure, but the resources that a team has. And Peaster is a team on the way up, and they maximized what they had. Whereas I feel like with Pilot Point, I consider them more disappointing because they had more and they never lived up to that hype. They just never made it. Every game, especially in non-district with Pilot Point, I just found myself confused. Like, why is this happening? Plainview, they did win, even though I remember this one of my first interactions with the Bearcat blog was that I posted that they lost. Dave Campbell posted that they lost, actually. I just repeated that they lost the game. And they we actually won the game, 30-28. But still, I did some research in that game. That's a game they should have won by 3-4 touchdowns. When I look at Plainview now, this was a team that went 8-3 and 6-1 in their district. But again, there's not really big talented teams that they're playing. When you look at that, it's not like they're playing the Bixby's and Broken Arrows of the world. They're beating Paul's Valley and Sulphur and Kingfisher. These are the kind of teams that they should be beating. So for me, Pilot Point should have won that game by a little bit more. Then the DeKalb game, which I know was last second and rescheduled and all that COVID fun stuff. And it's great that we haven't had to talk much about COVID this year as far as District 4-3A and that kind of stuff. But they lost that game, and it was a 1 point game. But that was a game that they were like a 20-point, 25-point favorite on the computer poll, and just that's a game you should win as well. And then Gunter, they lost in a very non-competitive way, 59-6. And then, they kind of found some things out during district. They beat Paradise, Whitesboro, that double overtime game, but it just never seemed to click. They beat the teams that they were supposed to beat, but if it was a 50-50 game, they just did not show up. And that's why I'm disappointed in them, because I feel like they didn't maximize their ceiling, whereas Peaster kind of did. So going into off season, I feel like I have more warm and fuzzy feelings toward Peaster than I do for Pilot Point. So hopefully Pilot Point figures it out. I'm not pointing any fingers. I don't know. I'm not saying it was a bad coaching job. I'm not saying there was a cancer in the locker room or just a player or a group of players, but just something didn't click there. And sometimes, like if you're playing Scrabble and you just have your 7 letters, sometimes you just got to get new letters, and maybe those new letters will make some bigger words or some better words. And maybe this new batch of kids, the seniors leaving, and the younger underclassmen will bring Pilot Point back up. But this team and this chemistry and the way the coaching staff approached them, it just didn't work this year. And that's a shame, but there's always next year. I don't think anybody's going to be calling for Coach David's head. Or our the assistant coach of the Millennium, Coach Marsh, obviously loves that town and loves that community, but just I hope they figure it out, because it was I can imagine how the coaches felt, how frustrated they were, because just as an analyst, I felt frustrated about Pilot Point every single week, because I just never knew what I was going to get. I mean, Whitesboro should have beat them. Paradise, that game was a little closer than people thought. And then the early non-district losses just make you scratch your head with Pilot Point. So we say goodbye to Pilot Point. We can say goodbye to Peaster. We've got Whitesboro still. We've got Brock still. Whitesboro is peaking at the right time. So I'm very pleased with that. And we're kind of looking ahead at the next week of things. We've got 4 games in the Region 1 bracket: Shallow Water versus Early, and Bushland versus Whitesboro. These 2 games are pure 50-50 toss-up games. I think Shallow Water and Whitesboro will end up winning these games, and will be our regional semifinal. Jim Ned and Brock are going to be huge 5-6 touchdown favorites over their opponents. I've got Jim Ned over Muleshoe and Brock over Amarillo River Road, which will set up next week. We will talk Jim Ned versus Brock. Maybe I can get somebody from the big country. Maybe I'll get Brandon over here. Maybe he'll talk a little Jim Ned Brock with us. Who knows? I'll see if I can use my connections to pull that off. And then I think we'll also be talking Shallow Water against Whitesboro. And then just kind of from there, I think we're going to see the Whitesboro versus Jim Ned Brock winner. It's just so hard, because I did declare Brock the winner of the Brock Jim Ned game, but again, just seeing how Jim Ned played Peaster, they just played them differently than Brock did. I know you can kind of look at that game and go, well, 80-6 versus 49-12, but again, if you look at the number of plays, it's just a completely different metric. When you look at yards per play, Jim Ned was right there with them. They just play a different style of football that's not needed for these big 80-6 kind of scores. So I think Brock will be a slight favorite, but I don't know if I'm going to pick them, because obviously I use Ric Flair philosophy: to be the man, you got to beat the man. And currently, Jim Ned, you are the man. So we will find out next week if all of these things came true. I'm about 99% sure we're going to see Jim Ned against Brock, but we could see any variant of the Shallow Water Early Bushland Whitesboro. The computer poll has all 4 of those teams within 1 point of each other. I mean, it's just parity when you look at it like that. So certainly Early is peaking at the right time. Their last 2 games, they've looked great. Bushland is playing good football right now as well. Their offense is clicking. I think Whitesboro is playing fantastic football right now. So two very intriguing matchups that I think are going to be good football in 3A Division 1, Region 1. Probably starting next week, we'll get a little bit into Region 2 because Region 2's got some big fun teams. I think got 5 really good teams in Region 2 with Mount Vernon, Gladewater, Grandview West, and Malakoff. And I think when Gladewater and Grandview play this week, obviously we have to say goodbye to one of those teams. But I think Malakoff West, Mount Vernon, and the winner of that game will be a very solid Final Four for Region 2 on that side of the bracket as well. So I'm the Professor, Matt Diggs. You can follow me at Twitter at Professor Diggs. Midnight, The Dump. It's where I kind of go over all of the action. Thursday morning at 10 a.m., my point spreads and picks are officially released. I've given you the picks. You got Shallow Water, Whitesboro, Jim Med, and Brock, but I'll give you the point spreads at theoldcoach.com on Thursday morning at 10 a.m. is when they are released. So to all of our friends in Pilot Point, thank you for hosting this, and thank you for agreeing to host this even after we say goodbye to Pilot Point. Hopefully you guys figure your whatever's going on over there, whatever didn't click, hopefully you can figure out that click and get it ready for off season and getting into next year. But we will still be waving our 377 flag with Whitesboro and then Brock over in Parker County as well. So thank you for tuning in again this week. Go ahead and start the music and fade me out. I'm the Professor. See you next week.